Alright, so everyone, we are the group that we worked on zombie movie. And the movie chosen was 28 Days Later. And my name is Seung. This is Daeun and this is Seung. So, briefly, refreshing, the scene that we chose to scientifically analyze was that the scene that a crow picked on a dead body, well, the zombie's dead body, and a drop of blood went into the guy's eye, and then he was infected, and then he became pretty much zombie in like less than a minute. So the rabies virus, yes.
So the rabies virus was transmitted from...
So there are three. There are three claims that we made to scientifically prove that this is possible. One is that viruses or a virus can be transmitted interspecies among the interspecies. And second claim was that virus can be transmitted via blood. The third one was that viral infection can cause radical behavior change of the host. So Hoseok's gonna explain about the interspecies transmission.
Hello guys. So our first claim was that the transmission through interspecies is possible, which is also referred as interstep transmission, from primates to humans. We're focusing on today's topic. And to give you guys a brief idea and like examples how that happens throughout the history, multiple epidemics actually originated from non-human hosts. So the good examples are measles, SARS, influenza, and HIV. All of those diseases you probably heard of through like media and news. And 28 days, like the whole story is based on the idea that this whole rage virus was transmitted from a released chimpanzee. And there are 4 steps of this virus transfer. First is exposure, second being infection, third being spread, and fourth being adaptation. And as you can probably assume, the virus keeps evolving and continues to adapt to a new host. So here are possible like explanations of how HIV virus was originated. So these are actually little monkeys, and these are chimpanzees, and these are humans. And these 3 theories all bases their theory on the fact that the disease called simian immunodeficiency virus, which is pretty much like an HIV virus on monkeys and primates, was originated from one of these monkey species, and then moved on to a new host, which is the chimpanzees, and then they adapted to a chimpanzee, and then they found a new host in humans. So these 3 possible explanations are just a little different. They have little alterations in that there might have been an intermediate host, which might provided the recombination of the genes. And what I mean by recombination is just like the genetic mixing of the disease alleles. And as you can see, all these are just like different routes of how simian immunodeficiency viruses is transmitted from monkeys to another host, and eventually they will end up in human. So to be more specific, with to present to you guys a more like a real life example, there was a study conducted in Belgium and Netherlands that studied the transmission of the Entamoeba butali and Trichuris and Trichura. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but these are parasites basically. These parasites pretty much are like they're like invasive amoebas that will engulf the like regular cells and like organisms, and that they will cause humans to be in really great danger, including death. So there was a case study in Belgium, Netherlands, like I said. 45 animal caretakers were studied and from the zoo, and it was found that more than 80% of 40 kinds of species of non-human primates were infected with or identified with at least one of the gastrointestinal parasites found, and these two are just like the most found parasites. So the subjects were examined with the PCR, which is like a genetic way of evaluating where you have that DNA or not. And it was found that 16 of these animal caretakers were found with more than one parasite, which strongly supports the idea that primates to human disease transmission is possible. And next, Seung will talk about how, like seeing specifically how that drop of blood that was dropped on his eyes that made him go crazy is possible by explaining the blood-borne pathogen transmission.
So, the transmission of blood-borne pathogen can be, there are 4 major ways that they can happen. The first one is cutaneous contact, which means the infected blood gets onto someone's outer skin, and then the victim is infected. The second way is a mucous membrane contact. One of the mucous membrane contact can be in the eye, the mucous membrane in the eye, which is called conjunctiva. That's the second way. And then percutaneous penetration is when a tool like a mask or a knife or needle that has infected blood on it can interlude into the inner skin under the cutaneous skin, outer skin, so that the blood is can be transported deeper down in the skin and has a higher percentage of transmission. And the fourth one is aerosolization of the blood, which is the infected blood becomes a gas and gets into somebody's lung when he's breathing. So we'll talk about hepatitis C and HIV, which are the most common transmitted disease via blood. So these are the two different viruses are shown. And this is HIV, and then it enters the T cell, and that's how the transmission is happening. And hepatitis virus attacks the liver, and then the liver is infected by hepatitis C. So there were a lot of studies when I was doing research that were talking about HIV transmission in the medical settings. And surgeons are always exposed to risk of transmission via blood because they are dealing with surgery where there's an open patient who has open body, and there's a lot of blood splashing and stuff. So next slide. The odds are actually higher than expected. So this one study measured the percentage of blood splashes to the lenses when surgeon was doing a surgery, and out of overall surgeries, there were 28% incidents that had blood on the lenses the surgeons used, and in the surgeries where chisels and drills or saws were used, the occurrence was 40%. So this means that the surgeons get the blood of patients a lot during the surgery, and the study measured the percentage of contracting HIV through conjunctiva membrane contamination. There was a 0.9%, which is about 1%, so that is pretty high. And then the second case study is a case of a correctional officer. The correctional officer is working in the prison, and then one day he was breaking two inmates fighting, and while he was breaking up two inmates fighting, one of the inmates' blood got into his eye, so he was really unlucky. And it turns out that the inmate had hepatitis C. So after 1 month of diagnoses and all the measurements and stuff, he actually got hepatitis C. The small statistics of hepatitis C in the U.S. Every year, 175,000 new patients are getting hepatitis C each year, and the number of carriers in the United States are estimated to 3.5 million. So that's a lot. And even though it was not specific to membrane infection, the transmission risk for a single needle stick injury for hepatitis C was a 4% to 10%, and HIV transmission risk was a 0.2 to 0.5. So if we recall that HIV transmission risk of getting one drop of HIV-infected blood into eye was 1%, hepatitis C is actually more contagious than HIV. So Daeun's going to talk about the viral effect on host behavior.
Okay, so for an individual, for a human being, to make a behavior change, we actually need to go through a lot of steps. First of all, like as seen here, we need to be aware of the environment, then we need to think, then we put it into action if you're a responsible human being, that is. But the virus that we see depicted in the movie, specifically rage virus, that infected blood drop gets into the eye of the host, and that immediately causes the host to act very violently, trying to kill his daughter and eat everyone else. That shows that going from being unaware of the problem straight to action. So that shows that. So that virus just caused the human being to skip over all these steps. So that caused a major behavioral change. And we will also see that viruses cause host behavior changes, but they also can change the physical structure and the functioning of the brain. Okay, so I will use rabies virus, another virus, as an example. So, back. Okay, so how you get infected with rabies? So rabies pathogenesis. So let's say an organism such as a dog who's infected with rabies bites a human. Then the viral replication will occur in the muscle, and then this viral replication will then travel to the peripheral nervous system, such as other nervous systems that help your brain to function. And then from there, they can travel to your brain. And then from your brain, they can travel to other parts of the organs, such as your salivary glands. And they multiply a lot in your salivary glands. And they actually cause the host to become afraid of water. Because by drinking water, they will actually dilute the virus, and that will kind of eliminate or decrease the survival chance of the virus. And we will actually see how the virus actually promotes hydrophobia. So we have a patient here.
Agitated behaviour when water is presented to him. He tries to escape when his mother presents a moist and cotton ball. He even bats her hand away because of his hydrophobia. He demonstrates some gagging and difficulty swallowing, notable at the end of this clip. Hydrophobia is a unique symptom of rabies and is used for diagnosis in developing countries with high rabies prevalence.
Okay, so as we just saw, even the virus did not enter directly into the brain, although it entered through like a bite in the leg. The virus traveled all the way to the brain, and the virus affected how the host behaved towards water, specifically in this case. And also, besides from altering the host behavior, virus can also modify the functioning of the brain. So when the virus enters the brain, obviously viruses are not supposed to be in the brain, it will cause inflammation responses to occur in that area. And one of the ways that the inflammation occurs is by releasing cytokines, which are just pro-inflammatory chemicals. Okay? So we see that after rabies infects the brainstem neurons, then it leads to production of nitric oxide and cytokines, just really making the inflammation really bad. And that actually changes the brain area, as we will see here. So this is the immunohistochemistry staining. Yes, it is immunohistochemistry. So in here, if we focus on A, this is looking at human neurons. Brown staining that you see here, so brown here and here, are rabies virus that has infiltrated these neurons. And the other stain that you see, so like the bluish purple that you see, are the cytokines that are produced by these cells, so pro-inflammatory chemicals. And then also other sectioning or staining of the sectioning of mice brain were done here. BSO, CCL2, 5, and 10, which are all different types of pro-inflammatory chemicals. So we see that here there's a lot of rabies virus infecting the brain area, and that's causing a lot of inflammation and pro-inflammatory chemical production, which will ultimately change the physiology of brain. Next. Okay, as we can see here. So this is T2 MRI, so this kind of how you can, another way that you can look at your brain basically. So these gray areas, we have a symmetrical gray areas, are supposed to show hyper-intense lesions. And these are just patches of damaged cell tissues. So where you see these gray spots are where the damage has occurred. And same with here. You see that there's bright gray spots that has actually physically changed the brain, which can contribute to the host's behavioral change caused by the virus. Okay, so in the movie, we focus on 3 points. First, rage virus originated from the primates, and that transferred over to humans. And this was shown in the movie. And we showed that there were many historical epidemics relating to interspecies transmission. And second, the movie showed that the infection occurred through a blood drop that entered the protagonist or the host's eye. And we showed that yes, virus can be transmitted very easily through blood drops or bloodborne path. And lastly, virus led to a very aggressive or very different, eerie type of behavior. And I just talked about how virus can alter the host's behavior as well as the physical physiology of the host's brain. So that's how we supported our.
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Yes.